All right. Sometimes you gotta hit them when they ain't ready for it. So I essentially stayed up all night, didn't sleep, and I know if I go to sleep now, I definitely ain't gonna get up within the next 4 or 5 hours. So I'm just gonna do a short stream now. My sleep schedule is probably 110% screwed up, but it is what it is. Let's jump into this community challenge. Be creative with your own perks and whatnot. First perk comes in August 24th is a Scourge Hook perk. Where are you going? At the start of the... Okay, we'll skip all of that because well, I'll read it the first time it pops up. At the start of a trial, 4 random hooks are changed into Scourge Hooks. The auras of Scourge Hooks are revealed to you in white. If a survivor is unhooked or unhooks themselves from a Scourge Hook, their aura is revealed to you for 14 seconds. 1. Why would you ever reveal the aura of a survivor that's just now getting unhooked? If you're a tunneling killer, that's way too OP. There's a lot of other perks that are based off of an obsession and things like that as well. Like 14 seconds is kind of ridiculous how long to reveal somebody's aura. If you want to reveal somebody's aura, I would recommend going off of something like barbecue and chili. It's a cross map and it's around 4 seconds. If you want to reveal an aura for a long amount of time, you need to add some sort of range penalty so when you're within X amount of meters, the aura disappears. The only thing you really want to accomplish is just to see which direction the survivor is going. You don't need to know exactly where the survivor is at all times. You just need the zone. After that, it should be based off of skill and other things such as other perks like whispers, maybe Strider because they'll probably be injured, etc., etc. But generally, the only thing you need is essentially the barbecue and chili timer, 4 seconds to know. As soon as the survivor gets pulled off hook, either A, they're not going to move and they're going to get healed, well then you know they're going to be stuck in place for about 16 seconds. Or they're going to head off in a random direction. Then in those 4 seconds, you'll know that that particular survivor is moving in X direction, and you can just cut them off. You don't need 14 seconds. I would definitely decrease that to around about 4. It also helps prevent the threat of tunneling. If you're tunneling a survivor and they get unhooked, 4 seconds is more than enough time if you're close to see what's going on and what they're doing or what kind of path they're taking. Like I said, if you're at a distance, the only thing you need to know is which way they're going, or if they're heading directly for a generator or anything like that, then you know they're probably gonna go heal and then hop on that generator over there. Generally, another survivor is going to be along with them, so you can formulate a plan. Um, I also don't know why Scourge hooks are even implemented here for that. There's no type of stacked effects, there's no type of anything. It's just an aura reveal off unhook. It's really not necessary for a Scourge hook. And if you're trying to balance it or something like that, it's just... why? That's not a great way to balance that. But if you really want to keep the 14 seconds of aura reading and things like that, you're going to have to add some sort of negative in. That's not just, well, you have to use a Scourge hook because that's not enough of a negative to balance out 14 entire seconds. That's enough time for you to go across the map and get a hit on that survivor, either downing them or reinitiating a chase. It's essentially if they start getting healed as soon as they're pulled off the hook, as soon as your aura reading wears off, 2 additional seconds afterwards, they're just now going to be healed. So just keep things like that in mind. Threat of death. Whenever you're stunned by a survivor, the survivor becomes exposed for 45 seconds. Cooldown of 80 seconds. When you say stunned, I'm going to assume that's by pallet stun. And I think some killer has an add-on or something like that. I know there's one that if you pallet stun them, they immediately break the pallet. And I'm pretty sure it applies an exposed status effect or something like that with it. I think it's an add-on for a particular killer. But the problem I have with that is it's an entire 45 seconds of exposure. If you mix that in with any other killer that can apply the exposed status effect fairly easily, like Ghostface and Michael Myers, are just two examples, that becomes way too OP. Imagine playing Michael Myers and getting 60 seconds off of your tier 3. Then after that runs out, you can get an additional 45 proc. After that runs out, you can run Hex Undying and Haunted Grounds and essentially get 2 more procs. So that's almost like 4 minutes of just non-stop exposed status effects that you can essentially just keep stacking and stacking and stacking if everything lines up. Survivor perks. Obsessive Pervert. Well, the name of that's going to definitely have to change, but okay. If you are not the obsession, then you can see the obsession auras when within 40 meters of them. They have the ring that goes on keys that lets you see the obsession's aura the entire match as long as you have that key. Then you can see the killer's aura when they're within 10 meters of the obsession. There is something similar to that that's not like Kindred or anything like that. There's something very similar to that, if not the same effect. This perk deactivates when you become the obsession, reduces the chance of becoming the obsession. Well, if you become the obsession, this perk is completely useless. So if you're going to run this, that means you can't run Decisive Strike or anything like that that transfers obsession over to you. So you might want to add in a clause that makes it to where you can't become the obsession or something like that, or try to make this have some sort of passive ability so it has some sort of use. Because like I said, you could just grab a key with the ring on it, and that's all you need. Or you can run Empathy if you really want to use a perk slot. I would recommend just the key. Empathy, if they get hit by the killer, you know where the killer is because they're going to be chasing that person. Same with the ring, you'll be able to see them as they're being chased, etc., etc. If the obsession never gets chased by the killer, your perk is essentially useless. So this is a good survive with friends game if you can manage to get the right person as the obsession, and you guys can work around it. But I'd still recommend using just the key. Nobody uses green keys, so use them for looking at other survivors and things like that. Bittersweet ending. Whenever a survivor other than you is sacrificed, all survivors leave no scratch marks for 24 seconds. Multiple instances do not stack. I think this person is just literally just throwing out big numbers because they think perks should have long extended effects. Like, why do you not want to leave scratch marks for 24 seconds. The only thing you need is just enough time to essentially either get distance or hide. You don't need to have no scratch marks and be able to run across the entire map, aka to an exit gate or something like that. Like, you don't need this excess of time. You really need to dial this back and actually balance it per game and not just throw a random number up. There really wasn't a lot of thought thrown into these. They just said, well, this sounds good. It's not fair to Killer that it's way too OP for Survivor. So, I mean, even Deception, which you can trigger multiple times because it has a fairly short cooldown, but you only get 5 seconds. This, a survivor has to be killed, so the only thing you really get any type of value from this is typically in-game, or if you are going to unhook a particular survivor and they die before you make it to the hook. It gives you the ability to escape. Or if you're trying to body block or something like that, it'll get rid of your scratch marks for a very short time. Again, you don't need anywhere near 24 seconds. I'd still keep it low to like maybe 4 seconds, 5 seconds, something like that. It don't need to be long. Because if you're breaking line of sight with Killer and you leave no scratch marks, you should be able to duck behind something or get to a loop or something of that matter within that short amount of time. If you're running in a straight line, then you should be penalized, and plus they're probably going to see you regardless. So it makes no sense. On to the next one. I don't know why you left that there, but I'm just going to skip past that. Destroying a drop pallet or breakable wall within 6 meters of survivor will deal 1 health state of damage to them. Shatter has a cooldown of 30 seconds. That is absolutely positively dumb. Not even unfair, unbalanced, or any of that. Just absolutely dumb. It's realistic, but I mean, in realism, a survivor isn't just going to drop a pallet down and continue to run and the killer's going to stop and break it. The killer's just going to either kick the pallet at the survivor, knocking them down, or just push it out of the way. Or just go over it if they're really in that much of a hurry. But we are talking about a fantasy game, and everybody is stuck following the entity's rules. I don't think destroying a drop pallet or breakable wall and any survivor within 6 meters should take any type of damage, because you are preventing any type of, well, anything that's not a pallet stun by nature. The survivor is going to take damage. This also needs to be defined better to show when this perk activates. Does it activate as soon as the pallet gets destroyed, or does it activate as soon as the killer starts the animation? Because in essence, survivors run at 4 meters a second. It's going to take them exactly 1.5 seconds to get away. The only way you're going to get a survivor within that 1.5 seconds is if you're running brutal strength with that, which generally takes exactly 1.5 seconds. And you can essentially hit that every time. If you don't want brutal strength, then as long as they're not trying to flashlight you after dropping the pallet or anything like that, you're never going to get any value out of it. So you got to keep in mind that this perk is essentially useless unless you have a smug survivor or you get the survivor towards a wall or something that they really don't have any chance of running away. So this is essentially going to make survivors go straight for stuns on you or just pre-drop pallets and run away. And it's going to essentially make killer stop and break every single pallet and just hope that the survivor does something stupid. Like a kill shack or something like that. They drop the pallet and then run back to window and get caught in it or something. It's a decent design, but I don't think it's implemented properly here. It needs to be tweaked. I also would only apply a deep wound effect or to them. I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't even do that. I mean, I would apply the deep wound effect, but I wouldn't injure them. I would just start the timer, and if the timer runs out, I would then injure them for not healing during that particular timer. And then, if you get hit with a second time by it, then I would down them to give them some sort of chance. And then balance the heck out of this, send it to PTB to get it finalized and balanced to a way to where it's usable. Sound check, timer. And then, if you get excuse me. Next post. Oh, that's the overall. I guess I should read what this says. No, I'd have to go all the way back. Here. If you could design your own perk to be in the game, what would it be? Oh, this was from a year ago. When we get new chapters, we may not always be into the perks, so this doesn't mean they're bad, but probably wasn't what you're looking for. Basically, design your perk. This is for fun, there's no winners and losers, they're just doing it to have fun. Maybe the devs will see, and maybe they'll like it. Do try to think about balance, synergies, and existing perks. This guy makes a perk, power in numbers. When sticking together is all you have, you try to gain from it. When any survivors are within 16 meters of you, they gain a 9% haste status effect for each survivor within range. The effect persists for 15 seconds. Problem with this is, again, when you talk about endgame collapse and things like that, there's already perks that'll give you a speed boost. If you run it with, especially with borrowed time, they can get a heck of a speed boost and essentially escape, and it lasts for like 6 seconds. The problem you have for this is you get a 9% haste status effect for each survivor in range. So if all 4 survivors run together, that's 36% increase in speed. From a 10% increase is adding, which I went over yesterday, 0.4, 4.4 each survivor would have. 9%, that's like a little bit less, like point like 36 or something crazy like that. I really don't want to do the particular maths on that, but somewhere around there, 0.36. So you're getting 0.36 added to your speed per survivor. A range killer will be slightly and very, 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 very slightly faster. Then you add 2 survivors in, and now you're faster than any other killer that's out there. 4 survivors in, and ain't nothing gonna be able to catch you. Even running survivors and things like that, or Wraith when he gets the 6 point something of speed, while he's coming out of that, and he gets that slight speed boost. If he's not right on you and lunging like immediately, you're going to be able to outrun him and essentially escape. Then the game there is going to be all four survivors just running together and doing generators. When the killer comes nearby, you run all the way across map and work on another generator, and you just slowly get progress in between. And if there's ruin, all of you just run together looking for the ruin totem. When you find it, one leads the killer away, the others get totems done. So it's way, way, way too overpowered. You're going to be looking at a serious reduction. If it's going to be every survivor in range, you're going to be having to look at like a 0.5 to 1% increase in speed. And that still is going to be on the questionable side. Let's see, if 10% is 0.4, then 1% would be 0.04. Four of them together would give you 4, 8, 12, 16. So you'd move 4.16 speed with every survivor together. So that could be bumped up ever so slightly. So the lower end of that will probably be about 1%. The upper end will be that balanced to make it to where a killer can still catch up. 15% increase to healing, unhooking, and other survivors see remaining survivors' aura. So this is desperate measures with the abilities for survivors to see auras. So I mean, obviously, this is just desperate measures with a buff. So, as they stated, it can be whatever it is. Just think about other perks and other things like this. For you to reference this, where it says to think about balance synergies and existing perks, and then you immediately do something like this, I don't think you understand what they meant by that message. When they said think about existing perks, they didn't mean add on to existing perks. They meant when you are balancing and creating synergies and things like that, make something that's different that can be possibly stackable on with an existing perk to be used as part of a build. Or think of it as, if my perk steps on the toes of another perk, then maybe I shouldn't implement it that way. This will probably help new survivors. Well, the problem with that first statement is new survivors don't stay new for very long. Generally, to get the basic skill gap of Dead by Daylight, it shouldn't take you any longer than a month of playing to be caught up on, the basics of things. You're not going to be like super amazing or anything like that, but you're going to be able to figure things out in about a month. But let's see. Perk. Messages from the archives. Once at the start of each match, one of the killer's perks is revealed to the survivor. Tier 1 reveals icon, 2 icon and name, 3 icon name, summarized description. And how are you gonna implement this? I don't even actually even need to go over this. How are you gonna implement this? If perk 1, you're going to get the icon, and let's say you don't know what the icon is and it ends up being Ruin. Tier 2, you're going to get the icon and the name Ruin, but if you're new, you're probably not going to understand what that means. But Tier 2, that's as far as you want to see. Like when Hex activates, Hex Devour Hope, and it shows you what it is. That's as far as you want to go. You don't want the icon, the name, or a summarized description of Devour Hope on your screen because it is long. Benimento, if that pops up, that's a long description. Any type of, long description perks, it's going to take up a lot of screen space that you don't essentially want taken up because you're not going to be able to see. It's going to be blocking. Because I mean, something as simple as NOAD that has multiple things. You get the haste status effect, and then you get the exposed status effect applied to survivors. It's going to take up a lot of space. There's a priority system where hex perks have more priority than scourge hooks, etc., etc. See, you can't add a priority to something like that either. That's a problem. If you run this perk and you can immediately see what hex the killer's running, that's the very big problem. Because now you're going to know if I'm running just haunted grounds, I mean, you just literally took out that entire perk. And if you're in an SWF, you now know not to go for it. You tell your buddies and it's whatever. Or if all your buddies are running this, then what's going to happen? Is everybody going to get the same perk identified to them? Or is the game going to balance itself? Like, what's going to happen? This is not a new survivor thing to help. This will help any and all kinds of survivors because you'll just know if the person's running NOAD and nothing else. Well, this person's running NOAD. Okay, I know I need to go totem patrolling. This takes away a lot of power from killers, especially like Hag or anything like that that relies on like Devour Hope charges. If that pops up to a survivor, it's gone. So no, I don't recommend making anything like that or ever incorporating any type of thing like that. At least not like this. These are killer perks. Stay down. Survivors who are in a dying state recover 100% slower than normal. I've seen that before. I think this is a post that was copy and pasted. Whenever the obsession is unhooked or Kobe. Yeah, I've seen this before in another killer concept. When activated, you get a 100% bonus in everything. Survivor's perk, I will not die for each gen completed. They get a 10%. Yeah. I've already went over this concept in the past. And I'm pretty sure I ended up saying no to basically everything and giving my remarks, so I'm going to skip that. It's a repost. This is a repost. There's no need for me to go over this again either. Although, I came up with the killer idea of the Yeti, but as perks I made for him. Rumple isn't the one who made the killer concept that all of this was part of. So somebody essentially either took his work or he took somebody else's work and reposted that. So somebody is plagiarizing. Blah blah blah. Survivor perks break and focus. When interrupted during any action, the nearest hook automatically becomes sabotaged and will respawn after X amount of seconds. Alternatively, when interrupted during any action, your wiggle meter will automatically fill X%. Both are terrible. When interrupted during any action, that means any types of perks or powers that will interrupt you. One hook is just immediately gone. And it says XX amount of seconds, so you're looking at a minimum of 10 plus seconds. Which essentially is just long enough for you to wiggle off. It's very bad because if multiple survivors got interrupted at the same time, all the hooks in that general area are going to be 110% gone. The other problem that I have with this, which is blatantly obvious, is all a survivor needs to do is just run the what is it, saboteur or a toolbox, and as the killer's walking to a hook, go ahead and try sabotaging it. If they're interrupted during that sabotage, the hook automatically destroys itself and it's useless to the killer. If they don't interrupt that, then the hook drops and now it's useless to the killer. There's nothing they can do with this situation. And anytime the killer knocks somebody down or interrupts them doing an action, a hook's gonna go. So any type of trading or anything like that, a survivor's trying to pull another survivor off the hook and you interrupt that action, a hook nearby is going to drop. If you're lucky, you'll be on a part of the map where you have 3 or 4 hooks, but if you're like in a corner or something like that where there's generally only 2 hooks, there's no way to get this hook. So you essentially just have to drop that survivor and hope they don't crawl too far till a hook spawns up. This can be stacked on multiple survivors and completely break the game. Same with this. All you gotta have to do is go down underneath a pallet and run power struggle. And by the time the killer picks you up, if you're running, save, like, heck, there's any number of perks you can do. And as soon as the survivor or killer picks you up, power struggle that pallet down, you're good to go. Then you would run like power struggle, obviously. You would run decisive. That's another one that lets you get up. And perks along that nature. And imagine that on an entire group of survivors. Anybody that feels like they're going to go down, they'll just stand underneath the pallet and, well, you can either pick them up and get power struggled or flashlighted or whatever, or they're probably going to be running some sort of perk that allows them to get back up anyway, which means they'll probably be running soul guard on top of that, which will give them that endurance hit. It's not fun. So definitely no. Bum 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 bum. Boon, third eye. When the killer is X meters away from Boon Totem, their aura is revealed to you. No. Keys. I have an add-on that allows you to see killer's position. That's within, I don't know, it's like 32 meters at the great expense of the key being used. It's double the usage rate, I do believe. So you can just run that, tap the button, see where the killer is, then let go. There's no need for that to be as part of a Boon Totem. Another reason this is a problem is because if you're playing Midwich or Gideon or anything like that, you can essentially zone the killer and know exactly what the killer's doing or where they're going. And essentially force them to keep breaking Boon Totems. Again, if you have a Survive with Friends group running and they all run this particular perk, all they have to do is all find a different totem, and now you know where the killer is the entirety of the map. If the killer's negligent and doesn't waste all of their time going from Boon Totem to Boon Totem, which is just going to be relit when they walk away, in most cases, it's going to be in extreme pain. You're taking away the killer's effective ability to any type of zoning, any type of pressure that they're going to apply, because you're going to know exactly where that killer is. Don't use that. Sanguine Bond. When healing or being healed, the location of survivors involved in the healing will have the aura build to other survivors. Why would I use this when empathy's a thing? I don't need to see the auras of all the survivors healing that particular person. I'm gonna see when that particular survivor is crouched and not moving that they're going to get, or that they are getting healed. All you need is empathy. You're making things way too complicated. You don't need to see every other survivor's aura. You just need to see theirs. Just empathy covers all of that. Spare tool. Searches through chests are X% faster. They already have a perk for that, but sure. The noises they cause and hearing distances are reduced by X meters. Tool shed guarantees an engineer's toolbox. I'm assuming you mean kill shack. If so, I would be pissed off if I got an engineer's toolbox on my first search. I would be actually very, very, very pissed off. But you need to define what tool shed is. I'm assuming tool shed's killer shack, but in that case, you need to use the proper terminology to say what exactly this tool shed is. Pharmacy I like. That's a heal. But an engineer's toolbox, you're going to piss a lot of people off, is what's going to happen. But I mean, if you want to use a perk slot just to get a basic engineer's toolbox, it's kind of on you. Like if you want to use pharmacy, you can generally find medkits fairly easy in chests. They're very common. Boon, kicking and smashing. Whenever you are down, all hooks within X meters of Boon totem become sabotage and wiggle speeds increase by X%. No, because survivors are just going to run to the Boon totem's range and then go down. Any hook that's near that particular area, which is generally, what is it, 24, 32? I think it's 24 meters or something like that. Is going to go down at 4.6 speed. It's going to take like it'll take like 3 seconds, 4 seconds tops to get out of that towel and get to somewhere you need to go. So it's not too terribly bad, but that increase that they're gonna get in wiggle speed for you to get out of that actual Boon totem's range is going to be ridiculous, especially with all the other Boon totems and things like that that exist now. This was posted, I believe, no, it was October 3rd. Well, yeah, it was October 3rd. I guess this was posted before the new Boon totem, which is essentially unbreakable. What is it called? Exponential. That gives you the unbreakable effect. This was posted before that. So, I mean, okay, I understand it trying to become a thing, but it's no longer necessary due to the new boons and things like that. Recover from negative status effects faster. Putting that on a boon. Now that's the first plausible thing that I can actually agree with. When you enter it, it increases recovery from negative status effects faster. That's not bad. If you're exposed or something like that, that decreasing the timer by a little bit, okay. The percentages to be determined, because I couldn't even give a percentage on how much faster that would actually do. I would add in a cooldown effect or some sort of way to limit it. Because if you walk out of the totem's range and then walk back into the totem's range, there could be a potential bug issue in that. But, yeah, I could see that becoming a thing. Soothing presence can be implemented. It's not going to be super amazing like all the other boon totems, but I could see it. Headstrong. Each time you're challenged with a skill check outside of killer's terror radius, a totem is spent on a failed skill check. That's already a thing. Only thing it is the new character or new survivors thing that adds in more progression for great skill checks. Great skill checks don't need any more progression added to it. It's already kind of ridiculous if you get them consecutively. So this has already been taken care of. There's also a perk that's already available too. I think it's Technician from Mayfing. Or Fing Man? Or I think it's Mayfing. Whenever you miss a skill check, it doesn't blow up the generator. And you lose only like a 1% or something like that. It's called Technician. Just a little further, once the hatch has been opened, you gain haste status effect and the sound of the hatch is increased by XX seconds. I don't know why you would run that. I guess if you get tilted from survivors not doing anything and you have to use hatches, I guess you would run it with Bill's perk to find the hatch faster. It's not defined enough to mention anything, and I wish they would slow down and actually put some sort of numbers and how these things are supposed to interact with everything, because the rest of this, I'm basically wasting my time trying to determine, things like that. And I think I'm going to actually cut this particular post short for that particular reason. It's not defined, it's not wrote out, it don't have percentages or anything like that. Half the ideas are half baked and things of that nature. So I'm just going to drop that post there, go on to the next, and to get some, more interesting things. Here's my super convoluted perks. Hex on Aging Killer. All broken pallets and breakable wall appears as fake pallets. Killers do this. Generator progress cannot be perceived by survivors, and after said generator not being acted with for 25 seconds. So you're essentially making an illusion on top of generators. I guess they seem like they haven't been touched, but you can't tell the progress on them after they've set for 25 seconds. That would be great to add to like the doctor's power. Gen progress can't be noted or anything like that, which I hope they eventually go back in and redo the doctor to make him make his madness more useful. Small things like that to where survivors can't tell generator progress and things like that helps. It would help the doctor tremendously. I mean, granted, they gave him essentially a radar ability, but I mean, before, you would have literally full map madness and survivors couldn't escape it with the right add-ons. So, I mean, one blast that increases survivors level when they're hit with it, as opposed to just them always staying at tier 3 madness and not being able to do anything, makes sense. It's a good trade-off. And it has small things that affect broken pallets, thrown pallets, chests, generators, cleansed totems, etc., etc. Fake walls, things like this. All of this would go good with an insanity or madness killer. So I wouldn't make it a perk because you're undermining an entire killer. But yeah, this is way too long. So I'm just going to see what they're trying to do and then skip by. Completing an action within 6 meters of any killer belonging. Gets a totem. Each totem reveals the aura of a random, non-player, non-held item, non-killer specific object. So, chess. Or any. Yeah, so chest or anything that's on the ground, essentially. Way too long. Not really. It's over defined, but it's not. It needs to be defined, but it's overly explained. So it's overly explained, but it needs to be further defined. And how I'm going to explain this is if you're making like a research paper, the thesis or the opening statement, if you shove a whole bunch of all of this into an opening statement and you try to say, blah, 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 and then when you get down to the main paper and your main paper just says that, when your opening statement has all of this, you're going to have a little bit of an issue. Yes, opening statement and theses and things like that is supposed to be a brief summary of everything that's going on. But if your main paper is short and then your opening statement has all of this, or your supporting statements has all of this and your main statements like this, there's an issue. It's way too much. And you can essentially activate it in a lot of ways. This can all be shortened into a couple of sentences and a couple of words. Like being unhooked, unhooking yourself, unhooking another survivor. All of those can just be when survivor comes, or when you get unhooked. Remaining in killer outer terror radius, medium terror radius, inner terror radius. There's only one terror radius for one. There is no outer, middle, and inner. So just in the terror radius. That's 3 knocked off there, 3 knocked off there. You know. Cleansing a dull totem, cleansing a hex totem, just cleansing a totem in general. Just shorten this, make this a lot more readable. Undertale reference, yeah. Your selflessness makes your friends' lives more important to you. Unhook survivors 15% faster. Already a perk for that. When unhooking a survivor, sacrifice activates. The next time you get hooked, you can last X more time on the hook. And your friends are granted a healing speed. After you are unhooked, you become healthy and all effects will vanish with 180 seconds. This is the classic example of desperate measures with renewal and all of that combined together, and then they took out the negatives. No, you can't do that. You should really be looking at other perks before you design something around it. Killer perk, Hook Obsessed. You want to hook someone as soon as possible. For your first hook, the survivor lasts 10% less on the hook, 6 seconds less. Or if it's a full hook, you're going to say or take away 12 seconds if they get to their second stage. Once saved, gain broken and oblivious status effect for 90 seconds, and a 7% speed boost for rest of trial. No! You're just adding things onto something to make it super OP, taking a lot of perks, slamming them together. No. 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 I have a few that I like from My Killer Concepts. Candyman, which I reviewed. The rest I have not. Sweets the Sweets. I've already went over this and said what the problems are. Happy Death Day. Each time you hook a survivor, all totems are protected by the entity from cleansing for 60 seconds. And then the craft. Unbreakable doors and pallets appear as unbroken. So they essentially dream pallets. So yeah, I've seen all of these and I've reviewed all of these and I've pointed out all of the problems that I've had with all of these. So yeah, there's no point in me going over these again. I went over the Illusionist. I went over the Candyman, which that's the name of this, where this comes from. He didn't add it up here, but if you look for the post, The Illusionist, that's where this comes from. These two come from the Candyman. The other two, Happy Death Day and Pennywise, they have nothing to do with this. But, okay. No, there's Pennywise. He just posted his entire thing down here. I'm not going to go over this, because this is for perks, not concepts. Again, another person who's just posting things from another killer concept. I'm not going to go over these. Survivor that is a healer. Well, that's what Claudette does, but let's see what you got. 15% faster blessing speed. That's going to end up being 1.5 faster, so 8.5 seconds to bless. Once per trial. The first boon totem to be snuffed out by killer will bless on another. It's a Hex Undying for survivors. The thing about this perk is that really makes it weak is survivors can relight totems. Why would you want a boon totem that you've already relit to go to a random totem anywhere else on the map? It's not helpful for you. Generally, you'll want to light the boon totem because you're either working in that particular area or you have a teammate, it's, looping or about to go down or something like that, or it's about to be saved so they can go to that particular totem and heal. If the boon totem gets snuffed and it pops up at some random area, it could go over to a generator that's already been completed across map. You can only light one boon totem, so it going somewhere and it being unfortunately placed, there's no way to change it. And if it goes to an area that's not very useful and the killer, just leaves it there and doesn't bother with it, now anytime you want to use these boon totems, you essentially have to go to a part of the map that's completely useless. There's nothing going on there. There's a completed generator, or if it's just out in the middle of BFE with no real cover, it's now gone. Useless. Again, I would rather just take the 10 seconds to relight a totem wherever I want as opposed to it choosing for me. 2, you don't need to have the same thing survivor-wise that you have killer-wise. Hex Undying come into play because once the hex is gone, it's gone. This is a way as sort of a redemption, but it also takes up a perk slot. So it's balanced that way. It's not really balanced per survivors because they can already relight totems again and again and again and again. Acupuncture, anti-tunnel camping perk. After unhook a survivor within 25 meters within the killer's radius, you're granted the unhooked survivor 15 seconds of time, in which the survivor leaves no scratch marks, trails of blood, grunts of pain, and you are granted endurance for 45 seconds. Endurance, borrowed time, 8 seconds, already exists. This entirety of this line already exists as another perk. You put two perks, you slam them together, and you're trying to send it out as your own. Don't do that. Energy healing, high vibrations. Recover from status effects. When within the radius of this, recover from status effects after 80 seconds. What status effects do you know that last over 80 seconds? I'm very curious. I don't know of any status effects that stay over 80 seconds. 1. Madness should not be affected through Boon Totem. That's literally under madness and sickness. You're undermining killer's powers with this Boon Totem. Torment, anything like that that actually is directly tied to any type of killer power cannot be used. You're making their killer useless. Hindered is just a regular status effect. It don't last for long. No matter how you implement it, it don't last for long because it's kind of OP. Exhausted, I think, the highest exhaustion status effects. I mean, there are a couple of things that last a while on cooldown, but a majority, 60 seconds, is like the high end. So, yeah, this perk ain't really useful in any aspects. 80 seconds is ridiculous. Like I said earlier, there would be a nice idea of, or a nice implementation of a Boon Totem that gets rid of status effects faster. More importantly, the exhausted status effect, so while you're in chase or something like that, your timer just continues to tick down, so you can essentially loop that area and get your dead hard back quicker. I could see something like that, the ability to run while inside of this Boon Totem and your timer to keep going. Okay, makes sense. That's a nice implementation. But trying to implement things like this is not a proper implementation. Here's a short. Able to unhook a survivor without a trigger sound to alert the killer. Add a cooldown to that, so you can't just go and unhook survivor after survivor after survivor. It's fine. I mean, it's not going to be that useful, because even if there isn't a blatant boom of survivors getting unhooked, the killer's going to be monitoring that hook. They're going to be looking at the portraits and things like that to see when the unhook happens. I don't know of a lot of killers that just go based off sound. Most are very observant about what they do. So, I mean, if one's running a killer and you want to sneak in because he's camping or something like that, that's about the only time for like stealthy unhooks or immediate unhooks you might be able to get value out of the perk there. But if it's not anything like that, then you're kind of not getting any value. And at that point, I would rather just have them get the notification and run borrowed time as opposed to flipping the coin. Steady Hands is essentially taking the perk slot of borrowed time because I don't know anybody would want to stealthily unhook somebody and then waste that borrowed time timer. I mean, it's a good backup to have, but that's 2 perk slots gone. So instead of stacking together nicely, they actually interfere with each other. Tactile. Scratch marks are dimmer by 50%. Maybe footsteps quieter too. You aren't even certain of how you want to take this perk, so how am I supposed to say anything about it? Dimmer scratch marks, I mean, could be a thing. They're still going to show up quite a lot, and by people that don't realize, scratch marks start out very. It's a scale. As time goes on, the scratch marks color change. They don't just stay bright the entire time. They go bright, and then they fade out, eventually going away. Killer, anonymous confession. When put in a dying state, survivor's icon on the left is covered black for the rest of the match, so the others won't know what state they're in unless they are hooked. Screams are reduced, down aura doesn't show but pulses every 9 seconds. You are trying to do way too many things to make it to where survivors can't find their people in dying state. They already have Knockout, I think is the name of the perk, that essentially does this, but it doesn't last for a long amount of time. Because what's going to happen is I'm just going to knock the person out, pick them up, take them to basement or something like that, and then just drop them. Or take them to a corner of the map or something like that and just get bleed out timer value. Survivors running over to them. If they stay still, survivors will be able to figure out where they are. If they're constantly moving and crawling away and doing crazy stuff, they're going to have to wait for a ping, which is an extra 9 seconds. I don't really see why a killer would give up a perk slot for this, though. It's not that strong. Yeah, survivors won't be able to tell the state that this particular survivor's in, but I mean, unless it's a dire situation, I generally don't care what sort of state they're in. You know, if it's not end game and we have to go for a save or something, I'm not too worried about it. If a survivor's injured, they're going to seek out other survivors for a heal. You don't really have to do much about that. They'll come to you. Killer perk or killer can break undrop pallets. Setting a limit of 6 pallets and then having a 2-minute timer, 3-minute timer. Essentially in any means necessary, but killer can drop pallets early. I can't agree with that, because the first thing killer's gonna do is go and drop and destroy a god pallet. Excuse me. And that's gonna be the end of that. So, no, I can't really potentially agree with that. You can either go kill Shack, drop that pallet, or go for any of the god pallets in the map. Because there are some, like Midwich, the one that you can drop that leads up the stairs, that completely block off the entire way. Actually, there's a couple of good ones in Midwich. And then the other regular god pallets everybody knows about. Too OP. Locksmith unlocks the ability to unlock the hatch even without a key. Well, I mean, I would stop there because he's got hard nerfed. Besides, the aura reading abilities and things like that, keys are almost useless. Yeah, you can reopen hatch if killer finds it and closes it, blah blah blah, but you can't get your entire squad out now, so keys have lost that value they used to have. Um, Mori perk, skipping it. Unwilling assistant. I have to be more. I'm not going to review every perk. If you have things like an obvious huge ore in the middle of it, aka this should probably be broken up into two different perks or something like that, I'm not going to generally go over all of this. I also always tend to skip this individual person and their skinwalker concept a lot because of how they have everything set up. It is very long. It's going to take a very long time to go over. And generally, when I start reading it, like between the first sentence, possibly sometimes the second, when I'm already like, nope, and I go on. Like this, I don't want to go through and read all of this because I know I'm just going to basically exit out. Pull a pallet themselves, but can't destroy it for a certain amount of time. He literally just read this person, I think's thing, and then posted his own by adding cannot destroy it for a certain amount of time. Why would the killer want to pallet himself? I could understand if it was a ranged thing and the survivor's running that way, you could essentially pallet block the survivor or stun them or something like that. But why would you ever pull a pallet on yourself and then not be able to destroy it for a certain amount of time, which is going to be huge? Take a long, long amount of time. And if a survivor sees you doing it, they now are going to be very smug and they're going to run. This essentially is going to be a god pallet because they know you're not going to be able to break it. So any survivor during that, like the other guy said, like 3 minutes, that's getting chased and sees that a pallet's been dropped and ain't nobody broken and it's a god pallet, they're going to run you ragged. So you essentially can't even go after any chases that go to that particular area for 3 minutes. And anybody being chased that knows that pallet's there are going to continue to abuse that. I don't see a reason of pulling a pallet down on yourself and not being able to break it. Ah, there's two skinwalker concepts. There you go. Changeling. I've already went over something like that. This is something about a noisemaker. There's already enough distractions and things like that, especially the rock and things like that. I don't need to go over this. With deception, rocks, and red herring, no need for more of those. Whenever gates are open, if survivors are within exit gate and killer does basic attack, it results as an instant down and Mori combined. No. Because then people are just going to run the trickster's type perk to keep them from being able to immediately go through the exit gates. They're going to down somebody, wait for that to go. As soon as they open up the exit gates, they're going to hook, get the blood warden effect, and then immediately run over and Mori everybody. No, I don't know why, but people love to add Moris to everything. Stop adding Moris to everything. There's a reason why they're offerings and how they're balanced, how one only lets you get the last survivor while one allows you to get every survivor. They're balanced there for a reason like that. Oil extraction from Gallinonum. I went over that as well. I went over that fairly recently. I see that he's added some other things to that. So, anybody interested, go ahead and pause video. So, I have went over this recently. Something tells me I'm going to run into this again in the future. Once he updates this particular post that I've went over, and I will see it again. So I'm not going to take the time now to go over it again. Throw your item at the killer to stun them. Using this perk consumes your item. That's actually a meme, but it would be a good idea. However, your item's going to have X amount of percentages, and that's going to be where the scaling of 1, 2, and 3 comes from, the different tiers of the perk. Tier 1, 100% item charge required, so you're essentially throwing away your perfectly good item. 2, 80%. 3, like 50% or something like that. You can even go just 175 and 50. It consumes items, gives the killer a mini stun. Can also only be used once a game, because I can see people just opening chests and everybody yeeting items at a killer. Also, once killer is stunned, killer cannot be stunned again by a thrown item for X amount of time to prevent survivor bullying. Because I can see a lobby of just people taking crap toolboxes or keys or grain keys, more importantly, and just yeeting them at killer. Killer gets stunned, gets unstunned, gets hit again, restunned, gets hit again, restunned, gets hit again, restunned. The reason I like this perk is you can essentially trade an item in your hand, which can be used for any other type of efficiency to get a free unhook or anything like that. And that's essentially how long the stun effect will last, is just long enough for a survivor to be able to get an unhook successfully without worrying about the killer retaliating. I've seen this before. Pallets break when killers run into them. Token system. This lets you charge towards killers and stun them after unhooking survivors or finishing gens. No. Anytime you're blinded by flashlight, you gain 15% action speeds to kicking pallets, hooking survivors, and picking up survivors. Doesn't say that it's stackable, and it doesn't say how long it lasts. So this needs to be defined out a little bit more before you can get any type of adequate situation. Definitely needs a limit. And a time limit, a cooldown, and a limit to how many times it can stack. Shadow step. There's already something that exists. I'm not going over that. Hyper focus. Another thing of being interrupted or reduced. Aura will not be shown. There's a perk that all of these are just different perks that he's pulled from and then slammed into one thing. There's already perks that exist, every single one of these, essentially, or a way or something that counteracts it, like skill time, warning sound, and bonus skill checks, things like that. There's something that completely either counteract or something that's similar to this, and they're just shoving them all together in one perk. This is essentially an endurance. Status effect that activates after you reach stage 2 on hook. There's a lot of different perks that they have put in that have some ain't too hard to activate, some are harder to activate, but they give you a lot more benefit. Get rid of that. Multiple perks that does all of that jammed together. Deafened and oblivious status effects until a survivor completes 5 successful skill checks. I don't know why a killer would give up a perk slot for that, but okay. Good skill checks result in 10% regression. Great skill checks, 5% bonus progression. This is old school ruin, and it just has a bunch of things to activate it. As he said, I wanted to bring back the old Hex Ruin, but without the red skill effects affecting the entire team. Ruin's already been changed in balance for a reason, because everybody was starting to learn how to hit the skill checks, and Ruin wasn't getting any the boost that it was made to have. Don't try to go back into the past, because it's already been past balance. That it's already been changed. Accept it. Leave it alone. All of this, again, is just a whole bunch of different things slammed into one perk. I don't need to go over this. This guy, I will probably go over the first one. If the first one isn't clearly defined, the rest of these probably aren't going to be clearly defined either. And they're just spitballing. I'm not going to go over anything that seems spitballed. I want to go over more serious and thought out concepts. But the bad touch. Your touch puts a curse on objects after you perform 3 basic attacks against the palette. It becomes block. Why is it 1, 2, and 3? It should be 3, 2, and 1. But anyway, palette becomes blocked by entity for 10 seconds. Well, obvious problem with that is, I was going to say Mad Grit. Mad Grit's not what I'm thinking of. Whatever the Hex perk is, when you do a basic attack on survivors, it makes the pallets unusable within X amount of range. I think it's like, I don't know. It's not very far. It's not like 32 meters, I don't think. I think it's like 16 or 24 or something. So just from this first perk, there's already a perk that already exists past that. If a survivor would read your aura is not revealed. You can see the auras of the survivor. They scream, reveal their location. I don't need to go over all of these. They're all going to be similar to that. There's already perks that does all that. I'm going to assume this is pulled from a individual killer concept. I'm not going to go over those. Hysterical strength. When you pallet stun killer, the pallet breaks. Killer is stunned for 60% longer. Autophobia. If you are the last person in the trial and the killer picks you up, the nearest hook breaks and you wiggle faster. This is from earlier. Like a whisper, if you successfully win a chase, scratch marks will not appear and you run silently for 12 seconds. Way too long, needs to be nerfed. Every time you hook a survivor, the speed at which you get bloodlust is increased by 10%, has a limit of 4 tokens. Bloodlust has been balanced, has been redone, it's been removed, it's been added, it's been messed with in PTB. I don't recommend trying to change anything bloodlust. I mean, they did a whole PTB over it where they deactivated bloodlust and see how the game functioned without it, and etc. etc. I wouldn't touch bloodlust. If anything, that's probably the number one balanced thing in the game. Sore loser when you're in a chase for at least 10 seconds, so every chase, and lose it, gain a token. Token will give you speed. Every time you engine a survivor, you lose a token. There are perks to give killer speed. They are very balanced. You don't need to actually go through with that. Hands off. Whenever survivor starts cleansing a totem, they receive blindness and oblivious. The effect persists for 30 more seconds if a survivor cleanses the totem. So why not just say 40 seconds? But okay. Also, does this effect go away if they stop cleansing a dull totem? Occult inspired survivor perks. I went over something that's exactly like this. I've already done this. This is a killer concept, just copied and pasted, essentially. As long as you're not the obsession, survivor healing action will start at whatever percent. No. This has all been added in. We're back in July, so half of these people haven't had this future, of what's going to be in store. Makes sense that something like this would pop up. It's already been taken care of, which is good. Performing a cooperative action, negative status effects on survivors will decrease by whatever percent. I like that. I'll never trade it for a perk slot, but I do like that as a start of a perk. This is going to have to be balanced, maybe add something else to it, but I do like that. You're going somewhere. When a survivor depletes an item, lethal usage activates. All survivors will expose for X seconds as soon as item reaches its depletion point. Thing about that particular thing is, what do you mean by item depletion? Because there's some items that well, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, does built to last trigger this? Because, I mean, if you use a syringe on a med kit, the entire med kit goes poof. If you use a syringe in a med kit and you have built to last, I'm pretty sure that the med kit just goes to 0% and you're able to still use the med kit with built to last. The exposed status effect, that's going to take a lot of balancing and things like that because, well, I mean, medkits. If you're healing, you don't want to immediately get exposed for a large amount of time after healing. Then you added in the effect of the aura of the exposed survivor being revealed. So, it's not going to be for a very long time. Where are we at? We're at July. I'm actually going to skip ahead to more recent ones. Because I think I'm actually going farther away the more I go down. I see. So number one's going to be the start of the post. This makes sense. So when I started from the end, the more recent things I've already went over on these first couple of pages. So I've essentially just completed all that. 26 pages. I hope you will be okay after this. Yeah, tell me about it. Good morning. Well, I guess good evening. Morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it is for you. I don't have to go over all 26. I thought that one would be what was recent and then it would go backwards, but it's actually the opposite. And I just went over a couple of pages here. So, yeah, I actually am essentially done with this particular area. If I ever need more content, I can always jump back to this. But as you see, the farther I go into the past, the more perks overlap with each other. So behavior is actually looking at all the perks ideas, especially the ones that keep appearing over and over and over, just differently worded. They're essentially making perks like that fulfills all the requirements of the perks that are listed. So they are drawing some sort of ideas from the creation forum that way as well. Looking for feedback on a killer power idea. Um, let's see. Basically, the killer is able to spawn an AI entity that follows after a specific survivor. You are going to have a heck of a time trying to get behavior to incorporate something like that. The only thing that they've attempted to incorporate is the zombies from Nemesis, and you see how bad they are. I assume they incorporated and coded in zombies because in the near future they are working on some sort of concept like that. That's just kind of a start or a tester to see how things go. You would assume that they'll go back in and update the zombies AIs and things like that at some particular point as they get farther and farther along on the AIs of things. Or they might just leave them how they are because, memes. um, he wants to encode the AI just to follow scratch marks of the last survivor that was hit by killer. They want the AI to be able to bolt, move at 100% speed, being the 4 meters per second, or the same speed that the survivors move. It can open lockers, which instantly down a survivor inside. However, it can die from falling, and it can die from pallets. Once an AI catches up to the survivor, it'll damage or down the survivor depending on health state, but doesn't disappear until after downing a survivor. So it's essentially doing your job as the killer. You'll send the AI after one survivor after hitting them, and then you'll go off and chase another survivor. And essentially the AI is just going to ruthlessly chase another survivor until it either falls from a great height or gets pallet stunned. Those are the only two ways to make it disappear. Counters to this power obviously would be dropping pallets, finding ways to get rid of scratch marks, and falling off of high places. Getting rid of your scratch marks won't do anything but stop the bot from coming after you for a very small amount of time till you start running again. Because by definition, as long as scratch marks are being apparent or apparently shown, or as long as they appear on map, the AI is going to lock onto them and follow them. So any time that you run, this AI is going to pursue you. When you stop running, the AI is going to stop pursuing you. So essentially, either the AI is going to end up being broken because of this complicated programming and only going to be able to hit you as long as you're running, or they're going to have to design the AI to, once it becomes within X amount of meters to you, is going to ruthlessly pursue you until you go down. You're going to get slapped, they're going to continue to follow you, and then they're going to eventually down you. It's just a war of attrition, unless you get that pallet stun. And if you miss the pallet stun, they can bolt, so they're just going to continue to pursue you. It's also going to be exploitable because falling off of high places, I mean, the little dirt mounds and some other places, you can actually get a balanced landing trigger off of if you fall correctly. So it's very exploitable. But I mean, on the same note, if the AI is only able to follow scratch marks when you jump off of a ledge, the AI is not going to jump off and follow you. So in order for that to happen, the AI is going to be able to ruthlessly pursue you. So then, yeah, you're kind of in a catch 22 type paradox on how you're going to program this AI. It's either going to be super OP and never stop chasing you, or it's going to be very, very underdeveloped, and if you stop running while it's chasing you, it's just going to stop and just stand there. And that's about the end of it. So I don't know how any of this is going to be implemented. And as this game or guy states, if the AI is good as the AI we currently see from behavior, we're going to have a problem. Pretty much. Oh, boy. And then he goes on to say things about, I guess, his own killer concept, which is not what this guy was asking for. He was asking for advice on his. Unfortunately, at this time, this poor guy is never going to see any type of implementation. It just takes too much work programming something to be essentially perfect. Now, the AI isn't bad, or at least it's not as bad as I'm making it seem, or this guy's making it seem, because you can play matches against the AI in Dead by Daylight. Like, there are AI that you can play matches against and things like that. So, I mean, the AI, you can look up YouTube videos, things like that, of different implementations, things like that, or play yourself. AI is not bad, they just don't have that human emotions and thought processes. They hide in lockers and do all kinds of things like that. I mean, if a survivor goes down, they go jump in a locker till the survivor's hooked, they escape barbecue and chili. They go directly to generators and start working on them. When they're being chased, they run in straight lines. They don't utilize loops or anything like that. Very easy to take down. Chases don't last that long. Things like that. But if you incorporate that simple-minded AI and make it a killing machine, essentially, that does the same things, but essentially only looking for survivors, that AI could be pretty deadly. So, I mean, the AI is not 110% trash unless you're talking about zombie AI, but you gotta look at the bigger concept of the survivor AIs that have been incorporated and tested and things like that. Steve Harrington merch drop, and we are memeing again about Stranger Things being removed from Dead by Daylight. um, yeah. Just finished my chapter concept. I edited one mistake, waiting for the mod approval. I think I'm gonna take a long break after that one. We can see how good AI is during Nemesis match. Yeah, zombie AI is definitely to be desired. But I think they can use survivor AIs that have already been created and essentially tweak that to make it worthwhile, as opposed to relying on that pathetic zombie AI that they created that somehow seems to get itself glitched in weird areas, especially on Midwich. There's always one waiting on you to drop down from the second floor to exit gate. As soon as you try, you get slapped. It happens to me every time. But I went over a decent amount of perks, and like I mentioned earlier, I actually have not been to bed yet. So, just that I figured I would pseudo stream like an hour or so just to kind of fill the time gap for the day, and yeah. I'm going to name said stream mentioned early. And then I think I will probably be out for the day. If I do manage to wake up in time, I might hype on for a second stream or something like that. But I doubt it, because, well, I am inherently lazy when it comes to things like that. Why do the extra work when you don't have to? If I get paid to clean toilets, then I'm cleaning toilets. I'm not mopping floors and cleaning stalls and all of that. My contract says toilets. That's it. Let's see. Early stream. Fast rush of perks. Amp and other ideas. Very, very early. And the sad thing is I've been half chugging on an energy drink and half chugging on water, so I'm still semi-awake. I'll probably still be up for another couple of hours, but I'm definitely going to go ahead and try to lay down. So thank you for showing up. Appreciate you as always, going on them. I can't wait to see that concept that you have in store. It'd be nice to be able to actually type in that. It shows that I can do something, but no, I can't type. I guess it doesn't potentially matter because you are streaming and you can just speak what you want to say, but semantics. Alright. I'm going to have a very, very long lay down. And since I'm doing everything now, that means I don't have to get up. So I can just laze around when I eventually wake up and spend a nice long day basically relaxing. Actually looking forward to this. Good luck with your schooling. Good luck with concept and all of that. And always remember, whether I am here or not, to always supplement your lifestyle. I will see you later.